What's going on, everybody? My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the Voiceman Studios in Toronto, Canada. It is Wednesday, July the 3rd, 2024, 1:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is episode 269 of McRae Live. And I thought I would just jump on. I don't know how long I'll be on here today, but I just wanted to jump on and talk about Beverly Hills Cop. I know the vast majority of my viewers probably don't care about Beverly Hills Cop, but I wanted to jump on and talk about it because I'm a big Beverly Hills Cop fan, and I'm a big Eddie Murphy fan, obviously, having grown up through the 80s and the 90s, with movies like Coming to America and Trading Places and 48 Hours and The Golden Child and Beverly Hills Cop. And you could not have experienced the 80s and not been an Eddie Murphy fan. I don't care how old you are. Well, I mean, maybe if you were born in like 88, then you have no recollection. But if you're born in the late 70s like me, then you do remember the 80s. Maybe not as well as the 90s, but you remember the 80s. I mean, He-Man and She-Ra and G.I. Joe and Eddie Murphy and Beverly Hills Cop and Goonies and, Back to the Future. I mean, I was there, and a lot of you were too. And so I wanted to jump on and talk about it because I'm a big fan. And Beverly Hills Cop Axel F was released on Netflix today, July the 3rd, 2024, or Beverly Hills Cop 4. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. I would have just called it. I don't think Axel F is a better title than Beverly Hills Cop 4. I understand that, once you get past like 3, sometimes even 2, but once you get past 3, studios tend to not. It's psychological. They don't like to have numbers beside their titles because there's this psychological sort of thing that, oh God, like there's an acknowledgement that it's, wow, that's wow, another sequel. Geez, it's a high number. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, Axel F, what does that even mean? I mean, I know it's his name, Axel Foley, but it's a weird title to me, but whatever. I just would have called it Beverly Hills Cop 4. I think that's a great title. Why not? But anyway, so before I jump into my thoughts on Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, I am going to spoil the shit out of the movie. So you're forewarned. If you haven't seen it, which most of you probably haven't because it just dropped this morning, then go watch the movie, come back and watch this, because you can't. I'm not a movie reviewer, so I don't do the non-spoiler, then the kind of spoiler, then the semi-spoiler, then the spoiler. No, I leave that to the movie reviewers to that's what they do. I'm going to talk about it. And so, but before I do, let me just kind of give you my overall thoughts on the Beverly Hills Cop franchise as a whole. So, I recently, last week, watched the entire series again, but I watched it back to back to back, something I've never done with the Beverly Hills Cop franchise. 1, 2, and 3, of course, 1984, 1987, and 1994. And something really interesting in regards to part 3, which I'll talk about in a second. Part 3 is the one I've seen the least. The general consensus is that part 3 is, not very good, and it is the least enjoyable, and it is a massive step down after the 1987 sequel. Of course, there's also a general consensus that the 1987 sequel, directed by Tony Scott, is not nearly as good as the original. I think that's true. I think the first one is probably the best. There's no doubt about it. But that sequel, there's a lot of fire in that sequel. And it was directed by Tony Scott, who was coming fresh off of Top Gun. There's an energy to that sequel. There's a momentum. There's a feel. There's a vibe to that sequel that is just hot, that is just fire. And that the opening of Beverly Hills Cop 2 is fire. We'll talk about it. And we are going to talk about Axel F. We are, but I want to just sort of kind of give my overall thoughts on the franchise. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Beverly Hills Cop, the franchise. And so I revisited it last week, and I watched them back to back to back, 1, 2, and 3, all in one sitting. And the first one is classic, of course. It's probably the one I've seen the most. And what is there to say about it that hasn't already been said? So I'm not going to go through each movie. I'm just giving you my overall thoughts on the franchise. Eddie Murphy's fantastic in it. His first starring role, right? His first lead. He was in 48 Hours before this. He was in Trading Places before this, but this is his first leading man role in this movie. He's like 22 years old. He always looks and feels older to me in every movie he's in, but nonetheless, he's very young, and it got mixed reviews. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert did not like this movie when it came out. Contrary to it was a gigantic box office success, huge film for Eddie Murphy. Fans seem to really like it, but the critics, not so much. Okay, we have to remember that. But a classic film, a classic of the genre. Love it. Fantastic. One of my favorite movies of all time. Probably my favorite Eddie Murphy movie, although Coming to America and Golden Child, yeah, that's right, I said Golden Child, are up there. So then 1987, Beverly Hills Cop 2, right? Directed by Tony Scott, fresh off of Top Gun. The opening of Beverly Hills Cop 2. Now, the opening of Beverly Hills Cop 1, I mean, the heat is on, the neutron dance, hanging off the fucking truck, boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's classic, terrific soundtrack for that first movie. But the opening of Beverly Hills Cop 2, when you just hear that cowbell, like the music, the soundtrack of Beverly Hills Cop 2, the score in that opening especially is fire, is absolute fire. And the whole opening, I mean, right from when they arrive and they shoot up the jewelry store, the Alphabet Gang, they leave their little note, they leave. Sylvester Stallone's former, did they marry? I can't remember. I forget her name now. Fuck, the tall blonde, the 6-foot blonde. She was dating Sylvester Stallone or maybe married to him in and around that time. Her name escapes me. Chat room will let me know for sure, but nonetheless, a terrific opening. And then, of course, you go into breakdown, shakedown, everybody's running. I mean, just the whole opening to Beverly Hills Cop 2 is fire, absolute fire. There's an energy, there's a pace that feels like a natural momentum. Like it feels like it lives and breathes in Bridget Nelson. That's it. Thank you, Jay Beach. It feels like it lives and breathes in the same world as part one, right? Like you really feel that. I know part two is not as nearly regarded and as revered as the original. Fine, but there's some great shit in that movie. The soundtrack in part one is fantastic. Part two is fantastic. The action is fantastic. It just helps to, I know it feels like it feels a little bit like a retread of the first movie, but I don't feel that as much as some people do. It does feel like a new story, new characters. Yes, you're in Beverly Hills again. Yes, you're teaming up with Rosewood and Taggart again, but it feels good. Like it feels like it's almost a step up in terms of like the energy and the feeling of it. It's a great sequel as far as I'm concerned. I think Beverly Hills Cop 1 and Beverly Hills Cop 2 are a terrific 1-2 punch, especially if you watch them back to back again. If you're just joining me, I watched all three of the originals back to back to back last week, and I've never done that before. And I've seen them, I mean, countless times in the past, but I've never done that. And 1 and 2, they're just as great as I remember. Fantastic. Like I said, that opening of Beverly Hills Cop 2, one of my favorites, period. There's just such a, I don't know, there's just an energy and a feeling and the suspense and the anticipation that is created with the score at the opening of Beverly Hills Cop 2. What's going to happen? What's going down? Holy shit, what's going on? It's just awesome. It really thrusts you right back in typical Tony Scott, rest in peace, Tony Scott style. You know what I mean? It just is really, really cool. There's an energy to that opening, and that just, takes you right the way through. So I feel that 1 and 2 feel very much in line with each other. Then we get to Beverly Hills Cop 3 in 1994, 7 years later, directed by John Landis. When you watch 1, 2, and 3 back to back to back, and you watch them, in one sitting, and you don't have to notice this you don't have to watch them in one sitting to notice this. But if you were to watch them in close, you watch them maybe over a couple of days. But you certainly notice it when you watch them back to back to back. There is such a drop-off in energy, in Murphy's performance as Axel Foley, in tone and vibe and feel from 2 to 3. And it's weird. It was a very strange experience watching 1, 2, 3 back to back to back. It was very weird because 1 and 2, yeah, fire, woo! And then you get to 3 and it's like, this feels weird. And now I've seen the movie before and it's never been my favorite. I've never really liked it. And the general consensus is that, although it does have its fans. But when I started to read up on it after I watched the film and sort of brush up on my knowledge of part 3, I learned that Eddie Murphy had thought that Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop 3 should be a more mature, wiser Axel and not the smart aleck sort of wisecracking Axel he was in 1 and 2. And this is largely because he's older now, he's more seasoned. It's, 10 years later. And I understand that from a character, like I get the principle of what he's talking about, but you really, and it's not that there aren't moments of the Axel we know from 1 and 2. I mean, there's certain moments in part 3 where that little, that Axel does come out, but it's nowhere near where it was in 1 and 2. And Eddie Murphy almost feels lethargic in a lot of ways. There's a lethargic nature to his performance in 3, like he's just going through the motions. I mean, even 3, the opening of 3. Now we know the opening of part 1, right? We know the opening of part 2. The opening of part 3, there's no style, there's no kick, there's no punch. It's just a black screen. You hear, the nighttime air of Detroit. It opens up. It says Detroit, Michigan. I think it gives the date or something. And then there's no music. And then we just kind of crane shot down to Axel with his buddies, because they're in the middle of a heist kind of thing and they're talking. It feels like the opening of a serious cop drama. Like I don't feel like this is the opening of Beverly Hills Cop. And you don't even see the title of the film until the end credits, and it's just plain white text. Funny enough, I don't even recall seeing the title of Axel F. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. But so there's no heat is on kind of opening. There's no opening like, part 2, that Tony Scott suspense, like, fuck this wall, man, we're just jumping right into it. There's nothing like that. Now, I get that what precedes it is the death of Axel's boss. And so I get that there's a bit of a sort of a serious kind of holy shit. But it feels strange right off the bat. When you see the opening of part 1, you see the opening of part 2, and then you go to it feels like a different film, a different franchise. It feels like maybe I'm watching Metro Part 2 or something. There is no Metro 2, but if you're an Eddie Murphy fan, you know about the 98 film, Metro. Like it feels like I'm watching a different franchise. I don't feel like this is necessarily Axel Foley. The only time that Axel makes his first appearance, kind of feels like is when he knocks on that door and the guy opens, the door, and then he kind of does a little bit of Axel. But other than that, 3 is a very strange film. The soundtrack to 3 is just non-existent. I mean, the vast majority of the soundtrack to 3 is that fucking Wonderworld song that gets stuck in your head, which I think is the idea. But I mean, that's not like, what is this, right? It's not that the movie takes place at the theme park. That could be interesting. But there's a lethargy to it. There's a lack of energy. There's a lack of kick. There's a lack of power and punch to 3 with the pacing, with the tone of 3, and with Eddie Murphy's performance as Axel Foley. Again, that doesn't mean that there's not moments where you see him come through, like when he walks up onto the stage, and he's doing his bit on the stage. Yeah, there's moments of it. But there's just, and obviously, Taggart not being in the film is a huge drawback. You definitely notice that for sure. There's just a strange feeling when you watch 3. Maybe if you watch it on its own, like you haven't watched 1 and 2 immediately before it, and you just watch 3 on its own, maybe you don't notice it as much. You probably don't notice it as much. But when you watch 1 and 2, and then you watch 3, I'm not kidding. It is a gigantic, like fall off a cliff drop in energy and tone, both in the film and the style of the Beverly Hills Cop franchise and in Eddie Murphy as Axel Foley. It doesn't feel like a Beverly Hills Cop film. It's a strange feeling. I don't know how else to describe it other than just a strange experience watching 1, 2, and then 3. So it didn't do very well at the box office. It could be largely because of that. I mean, that obviously probably had something to do with it. It's not a very good movie. John Landis, who's the director of the film, obviously had directed Murphy in previous installments. In previous movies, not installments in the franchise, but like Coming to America and there was another one he directed Murphy in, didn't he? I thought he did. Maybe it was just Coming to America. I thought there was, Trading Places, of course. And obviously there was tension between them, and that's a whole thing between their relationship. But John Landis is on record as saying that the script was, and I'm paraphrasing this, but this is his, these are his words. The script was not very good. I did what I could. I did what I could with it. I tried to get Murphy to ham it up. Like there were moments and scenes that I think could have been funnier if Murphy was funnier, if Murphy was that old Axel, basically is what Landis was saying. So I tried to kind of get him to ham it up and stuff. And Eddie Murphy didn't want to have anything to do with it. He said, no, Axel's not that, wisecracking kind of, and it's like, so I think and because of that, again, I'm paraphrasing, but because of that, Landis basically said, the film has a weird feel to it. Like it's weird. And it is. It is. Listen, if you're a young, if you were very young in the 90s, and I was young in the 90s too. I mean, when it turned 1990, I was 11. But if you were like born in the 90s and maybe your first Beverly Hills Cop film was part 3, then maybe there is a bit of nostalgia to it and maybe you like it. But it's a very strange film, So when, of course, was there ever going to be a Beverly Hills Cop 4? We didn't know. And so jumping 30 years later, we finally have Axel F. We finally have Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. This has been a long time coming. We know that we are in the era, and we have been now for the better part of at least a decade, of legacy sequels and nostalgia and revisiting that kind of stuff. And of course, Coming to America 2, although it had its moments, was not very good. It was you know what I mean? There were a few moments that were kind of funny, but overall it was not very good. So people were fearing that this could be the same case here with Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, which again, I've said at the top of the show, but I'll say here, I don't understand why I understand what Axel F means, and maybe you just want but just call it Beverly Hills Cop 4. And I understand why they didn't, but I don't think Axel F is a better title than Beverly Hills Cop 4. Like, I don't think it, if you'd chosen something that may have been better, okay, fine. Anyway, I digress on that. That's just a nitpick. I don't hate it. I'm just like, okay, Axel F. Okay, why don't you just call it Axel Foley? Anyway, which of course we all know is the name of the theme song. So that's probably why. But nonetheless, I didn't know what to expect. The trailers looked promising, but so did the trailers for Coming to America. So I sat down this morning and I watched it. And again, I'm not a movie reviewer, so that's not what I do here on the channel. So I'm not going to go through all the plots and the characters and all that kind of stuff. I'll just talk about it in a broad sense, in a general sense. I will say that I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this. This is definitely more in line with the first 2 movies than the third film. But I read the reviews. I read some of the reviews and some of the negative reviews and the positive reviews. And most of the general consensus from the negative reviews are what you would expect. It leans in nostalgia. It's a little cliche. It's kind of tired. It doesn't have that. There was even one review I read from somebody now that said, the action felt tame and it felt safe. The movie felt safe. Well, here's what I have to say about it. Okay, first of all, I think Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is as good as it could be. And I think in the world, and I say that actually really have enjoyed the film. And, you know, I think it's important for movie fans and for critics to understand, and a lot of them do, a lot of the good ones do, but for fans to understand, you know, we can't go back. We can't go home again. And so if you're going to do a legacy sequel with returning characters that are way past their prime, I mean, you know, as if Taggart would be out there in the shape he's in running around. You know what I'm saying? It's like the Ghostbusters, right? We have to be able to suspend our disbelief and understand what this is really about. And what I mean by that is, that doesn't mean that they sacrifice a good story and a good film for just nostalgia. I don't mean that. I just mean we have to be able to understand where we are now in our own lives. I'm 45. I'm not 7, right? Where these actors are in their lives. They're in their 60s, 70s, sometimes 80s. You know, we have to understand what is this? Right? And like I said to you about the Indiana Jones film, if I can go, now that doesn't mean I'm not going to come on here and say that the movie's shit if I think it's shit. You know I will. But I look at these legacy sequels within the confines of being realistic, right? And it's like an aging rock band, right? Like you've heard me say this. If I can go and watch AC/DC today and get a great show out of it. They play their hits, they play their tunes. It was a good show, and I can leave having had a good time. That's all I can ask for at the end of the day, because Brian Johnson and Angus Young are, you know, they're in their 70s, for God's sakes. Well, Angus Young, I think, is in his late 60s. But I mean, they're not going to sound like they did on Back in Black. Right? I mean, if I go in expecting it has to be Back in Black or else it's shit, well, then what am I doing? Right? Of course it's not going to be like Back in Black. Of course it's not going to be like The Razor's Edge, right? I mean, they're 70 years old, for God's sakes. Do they sound like they did, you know, in the early 80s? Of course they don't sound like they did in the early 80s. And now, some people may say, well, then retire, then quit and don't do it. And there's an argument to be made for that. There's an absolute argument to be made for that. 100%. I can get on board with that. But let's not bitch and moan and complain that Brian Johnson doesn't sound like he does on Back in Black when you know damn fucking well going into it that he's not going to sound like it. You know what I mean? So the point I'm making here with movies and legacy sequels is we have to understand where we are. We have to look at ourselves in the mirror and see the wrinkles and the bags under our eyes. If you're, you know, I mean, if you're young, maybe not. But, you know, at 45, you should see me in the morning. Woo! God, I need to have a shot. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, I'm practically middle-aged. I'm not that 10-year-old kid anymore, and neither are these guys. And so we have to understand that if they're going to create a legacy sequel, okay, then let's have fun with it. Let's deliver a good story, right? Let's deliver the familiarity. Let's, you know, the nostalgia, the familiarity. Let's deliver something safe at first, especially if you think there is a possibility for longevity in terms of a franchise, then I think what you want to do is you want to deliver that first installment as a safe bet. Look at The Force Awakens. Look at Ghostbusters Afterlife, right? Now look at Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, right? They're both very familiar, very safe, and that's what you want to do. If it's hugely successful and you want to go on, maybe then you can start to kind of, you know, shape it a little bit, maybe inject some new life into it. Of course, you also don't want to do what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi and go all avant-garde and just what the fuck was that? But, you know, Star Wars was dead before The Force Awakens. And The Force Awakens was familiar, yes, but they needed to do that to earn the trust of fans, right? And so they needed to deliver something to prove that they can do it. And you saw that with Ghostbusters Afterlife, right? Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to like it. For a lot of people, they don't like that, right? They don't like that, and they don't understand why are we doing this? Well, because the rabid fan base doesn't believe we can do it. Look at Scream 5, right? Radio Silence largely delivered a familiar, state-of-the-art, run-of-the-mill, Yes, there was some, yes, Dewey was killed. And of course, they did take a few risks, but it was a Scream movie. It was a familiar Scream movie. Why did they do that? Because they needed to prove to horror fans that yes, Wes Craven is dead, but we need to show you that we can do it. We can deliver something familiar. That doesn't mean everybody's going to like the movie, but they can deliver something maybe that could be perceived as a little safe, right? It's the smart thing to do, especially with franchises that have rabid, foaming at the mouth fan bases or franchises that are largely in the shitter, right? That are largely dead. And Beverly Hills Cop is one of those franchises. And so when I watched Axel F, is it a safe film? Yeah, it's a safe film. Is it full of nostalgia? Yeah, it's full of nostalgia. Did I have a good time? Yes, I did. Probably because I'm 45 and I grew up with the movies. Now, if you're 17 and watch the movie and you're so used to Fast and Furious, then no, you're probably going to watch the movie and think it's the dullest piece of shit you've watched in, 10 years because you've grown up with hyper quick cuts, you know what I'm saying? But it feels very in line with those first two Beverly Hills Cop movies. The pacing, the tone, the style of the action, the cutting, the editing, it feels very much in line. It's got a bit of a modern flavor to it, modern polish. Yes, of course. But it feels, if this movie had come out in 1994 or the late, 89 or 90 as the third installment, this movie would have been fire at the box office. Oh, no doubt about it. Just de-age everybody down to their ages at that time. Of course, you'd have to change things up a little bit. Maybe Axel's daughter isn't 32. Maybe she's, 8 or 9 or something like that. And she's been kidnapped. Obviously certain things would have to change in terms of the story. But I just mean you deliver this movie with some changes to the story, obviously to fit, the time period. It would have been fire. People would have eaten it up. 100%. He's gone back. It's a few years later. Even if it came out in the late 90s. So it's a good Beverly Hills Cop film that they lean into the nostalgia. The opening's got, The Heat Is On. You also hear a lot of tracks from Beverly Hills Cop 2 as well. They definitely leaned into that. They did, and they make no apologies for it. They pull no punches. They make no apologies for it. They leaned into it. They were like, yes, we're going to open this movie with The Heat Is On. And we're going to play the Axel F theme a bunch of times throughout this movie in many different variations, in many different instruments, synth and strings and piano, whatever. They're going to play it. And they also had Shakedown, Breakdown from Beverly Hills Cop 2. They played that when he's driving the snowplow. Was he driving the snowplow? Yes, he's driving the snowplow. They played the Neutron dance when he's in Beverly Hills. He's driving a little, golf cart. I mean, they didn't give a fuck. They were like, this is what you want. This is what you came for. And it's like, yeah, this is what I came for. If I'm going to see AC/DC today at 70 years old, yeah, I'm going for fucking Back in Black, Hell's Bells, Thunderstruck, She Shook Me All Night Long, Highway to Hell. Yeah, I want to hear the hits. Because I know what it is. I'm not expecting Beverly Hills Cop to now go off and become the next Fast and Furious. I'm not expecting it to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't need to. This is this is what it is. Now, that doesn't mean that depending on how successful this is, they won't do others. They have talked about it. There's rumblings about it. Fine, fair, okay. But I'm going in. I want to hear the hits. I want to see the hits. I want to see the nostalgia. I know that might be strange for some, but I'm looking at it realistically. Eddie Murphy's 63 years old. Realistically, he'd be retired, and so would everybody else. I don't think, let's be honest here. I don't think Taggart would have come out of retirement, and Billy being a private investigator, that's probably the most realistic fucking move in there, right? I mean, Axel at 63 wouldn't still be a Detroit police officer, although fucking Eddie Murphy, I don't know what the hell, oil Volay 38 times a day. I don't know what he's doing with his skin, but he looks fucking immaculate. I hope to look that good when I'm 63, but, But you suspend your disbelief for the fun, for the show. You go, if it put a smile on your face, that's all you can ask for. Now, again, not at the detriment of story, not at the detriment of character. I don't mean that. I don't mean you just like this. I don't mean that. I just mean that at the end of the day, what is this? Right? What is this? Like, we know what this is and what it should be, right? I mean, come on. Like, is anybody going in expecting this to revitalize the franchise, taking it into wild, crazy new directions with a possible another 4 or 5 movies, and now Axel's traveling all, like, are we really expecting that? I mean, if it happens, okay, but I mean, come on, this is a reunion fucking concert. This is potentially a farewell tour. This is, you know what I mean? Like, come on, and so for that, I really enjoyed it. And I thought the story was solid. It was a very Beverly Hills Cop story. I thought Kevin Bacon was fun. I think Kevin Bacon could have been a little more, he was great in his role. I think it would have been fun to see him more, I don't know, maybe a little more time with him, a little more villainous maybe, but he was good. John Ashton, of course, poor, God, he's 70, whatever, is 4 or 5, but it was good. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I thought, was great. I wouldn't mind seeing more of him and Axel in a future Beverly Hills Cop movie. That would be interesting. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt does comedy really well and does action. He's a terrific actor. I think he's probably underrated. I know he's been in some terrific films, but he's one of those actors that any role he's in, I believe he's that character. And so I wouldn't mind seeing more of him and Axel in a future installment, almost like maybe Joseph Gordon-Levitt taking on that, a little bit of that Billy kind of role. Not that you can't have the other two guys back, it's fine. But I thought their chemistry was really good. And overall, like it was predictable. You knew where it was going to go, but it was Beverly Hills Cop. You know what I mean? Like, what do you want? Like all you people out there, what do you want? It's a 63-year-old. What do you want? Did it make you smile? Well, kind of, yeah, I guess. Well, then fucking shut up. You know what I mean? Stop being so nitpicky about Beverly Hills Cop 4 30 years later. I mean, this is, unless it's an absolute total train wreck, you know what I mean? I'm not asking people to be disingenuous or disingenuine with their own feelings. If that's truly how you feel, that's truly how you feel. But some of the things I've been reading, I'm just like, guys, that's like going to an AC/DC concert and going, well, it's no Back in Black, I'll tell you that. Well, of course it's not. Well, he's 76. He's nearly 80. What do you expect? Back in Black? You expect him to be up here? He's not going to be up here. He's going to be down here. What do you want? You know what I mean? Of course. Well, Eddie Murphy's not, he's not 22. He's not. He's... Anyway, I thought the movie was fun. I thought it hit all the right nostalgia beats. I thought the action was really good. I thought the soundtrack was really good. Not just playing, the Neutron Dance again, The Heat Is On again, Shakedown, Breakdown again. That was great to hear those 3 iconic songs. But the score itself, the actual score, I thought was great. Had a little bit of that Beverly Hills Cop 1, had a little bit of that Beverly Hills Cop 2, but there was no iota through the entire movie, not one bit of feeling of Beverly Hills Cop 3. There wasn't, because that movie is, to me, it's out on an island. Not that there aren't, certain redeeming qualities about that film. Like there's a couple of certain scenes or that moment or that line or whatever. Sure. Like I love that scene in part 3 when Billy says, I'm going to get it wrong, but he says, I'm the DDOJSIOC or whatever. Right. And Eddie Murphy's like the JJJOC. Yeah, it's funny. Like there's certain little moments, but overall the tone and the feel of Beverly Hills Cop 3 is it's so weird. And you don't feel that here at all. This feels like Beverly Hills Cop 3. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F feels in tone, in pacing, in style, in soundtrack, feels like Beverly Hills Cop 3. Feels like what Beverly Hills Cop 3 should have been like and should have felt like. Now, the only thing I will say that I am missing, and Eddie Murphy, this isn't a conscious choice for Axel F in particular, but I was reading an article in terms of just Eddie Murphy himself, is his famous laugh. You know, that laugh that he does, right, in most of his early films is not in this movie at all. And that's disappointing. And from the article that I read, apparently he's made a conscious effort to kind of change his laugh, to not laugh like that anymore. I don't know how long that's been going on. I think something tells me that somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s, Eddie Murphy, and I'm making this as a speculative, like I'm speculating, but it's based on good sort of source material of what I've been able to piece together with a lot of things I've been reading about Eddie Murphy and his career in the late 80s, early 90s. Something tells me that he was in a very different place in his life. And even John Landis said this as well. He was coming off a lot of sort of box office, not, you know, I don't say box office disasters, but failures at the box office when he entered Beverly Hills Cop 4, which just ended up being another failure at the box office. It wasn't until The Nutty Professor in 96, I believe it was, that helped to sort of revigorate him a little bit. But, you know, whether it's Harlem Nights or whether it's, there's another one in there too. There was a few that didn't do very well. And I think he became known as that, you know, young, wisecracking comedian. Like he was, you know, whether it's Trading Places, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, The Golden Child, Coming to America, you know, he has that fun, that wisecracking. And I think he wanted to do, I don't think he wanted to be just seen as that. I think he felt annoyed that he started to be seen as just that kind of comedic character, that kind of comedic actor. And so he made a conscious effort to kind of change that a bit, and it really wasn't working for him. And I think that laugh, I'm speculating here, but I think that laugh was probably part of it, was probably part of kind of seriousing himself up, if you will. And of course, now, he could have gone back to that laugh for Axel in Axel F because it makes sense to do that. It's part of the character. But his laugh, his funny laugh, his great laugh is not in this movie anywhere. So that's disappointing, but it's still Axel. And it's way more, it's so here's the thing. Is it Axel Foley from 1 and 2? No, because Axel Foley in 1 and 2 is literally a man in his 20s. And I don't mean the you know, just the character. I mean the actor. He's literally a man in his 20s. And so, but the Axel that I think Eddie Murphy wanted in part 3, more mature, a little wiser, is the Axel we get here. But he doesn't abandon all those Axel Foley things. You still feel like he's the same Axel. Whereas in Beverly Hills Cop 3, it feels strange. It almost feels like he hasn't lived enough or hasn't, you know, he's not old enough. I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, so you do feel a little more maturity from Axel in part 4. But he's still got that wit. He's still got that quick thing. I love the scene too when he walks up to the front desk of the hotel and he's about to go into his spiel and do his bit, and he's just like, you know what? I'm too tired. Just give me a room. You know, I like that. Because it shows a bit of character growth, right? It shows a bit of maturing a bit, right? It shows a bit of that kind of thing without sacrificing the energy of what we want from him. And so, he was great. He was your typical Axel. Everybody was great. Everybody nestled into the role, to their roles well. And I thought the final scene in the film with Taggart and Rosewood and Foley in the car, I thought that was a great way to end the movie, to have that be the last shot. The chemistry between them was great. I'm just laughing at what Rosewood said in the car. Before Foley got in, he's like, you know, I think you need to sleep with your wife more. Like, it was so, like, I wish we could have got more of that, if I'm being totally honest with you. I wish there could have been more of the three of them together. Isn't that always the case, right? And, you know, who knows? Maybe if this thing is successful, maybe we'll see that in a part 5. But you also, it's that fine line now. John Ash, like Rosewood looks like he still could be kind of out there doing stuff. John Ashton he's looking old. And although they didn't give him something to do in this movie that is totally unbelievable, I don't necessarily believe that he would be out, riding the horse, going through everything. So I think making him the chief of police, where he kind of is set back a bit, was the right thing to do. But just seeing the three of them together was great. I wish we could have got more of it. But yeah, look, those are my overall thoughts of the movie. I think Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is the best film we've got since Part 2. I would say it's the third best in the franchise, a franchise of 4 films. And I think it's exactly what it needed to be. It's all it could be in 2024, delivering a sequel to a franchise that's way past its expiry date. Because that's another thing too. They don't make action movies like Beverly Hills Cop anymore. And what I mean by that is I don't mean they don't make them as good like that anymore, although that could be said as truth. I mean, in terms of the style, in terms of the way that the action's choreographed, in terms of the way that the action is shot, in terms of the way that the car, chases are filmed and shot, and what the stories are, and how simple action story. Oh, it's about a drug cartel and somebody gets kidnapped and somebody's got to chase somebody down. They're pretty simple. But that was what it was like in the 80s. And so a lot of these movies that we are creating legacy sequels to today, we have to be a little lenient, unless they're just absolute dog shit. I mean, I'm not asking you not to be truthful. If you really think it's dog shit, fair. But I think we need to be a little lenient and understand that we are watching a legacy sequel to a franchise that is way past its expiry date, that has no business existing. Like that franchise, the franchise from the 80s, has no business existing in 2024. They don't make movies like that anymore. It's not like action movies have evolved to, Fast and Furious. That's what an action movie is today, or Hobbs and Shaw, or, The Meg. This is what action movies are. And so it will feel more tame. It will feel more simple. It will feel a little more safe. It will feel maybe a little more predictable. But that's because it's leaning into what the 80s was. That's what action movie. I'm not saying that it was predictable in the 80s, because again, when you're living it, you're not necessarily thinking that. But in retrospect, you look back on how safe and kind of, maybe a little linear those movies were. And that's what we have here. But that's what we want, isn't it? I don't want a Fast and Furious Beverly Hills Cop 4. I want a Beverly Hills Cop 4. And because I'm the target demographic, I'm the audience, right? And so that's what I want. And that's what they delivered. And, so people can bitch and moan about fan service, but what do you want? Of course there's going to be fan service. Of course it's a tribute, not a tribute. It's like a reunion tour. That's what it is. So for what it is, yeah, it feels like a modern production value polish of an 80s Beverly Hills Cop movie. And I'm like, yeah, if this feels very much like what Beverly Hills Cop 3 should have been. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Again, not as good as the first two, because we've come so far with the tone and the feel of those kinds of action movies. But if you're a big fan of the first two movies and you settle in, you turn it on, and you just let it hit you. Just let it hit you and understand what I'm watching, right? Don't expect Fast and Furious action, Hobbs and Shaw, The Meg, or any Jason Statham movie. You know what I mean? No, just it's Beverly Hills Cop. It's like an 80s movie today. It's an 80s movie in 2024. It's exactly what it is. And so, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Yeah, I thought it was great. So anyways, folks, my name's Dave McRae. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on Beverly Hills Cop 4 or Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. If you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. What did you think of the movie? Have you seen it yet? Have you not seen it? Are you going to see it? Are you a big Beverly Hills Cop fan? Which is your favorite Beverly Hills Cop movie? Maybe rank them down below and let me know your thoughts. I'm a big fan. I think this is a much better legacy sequel than Coming to America or Coming to America 2. Much better. I didn't think everything about the sequel to Coming to America was a disaster, but Coming to America wasn't the sequel it needed to be. But again, because of the kind of movie that Coming to America was, maybe that's as good as it could be. And it's as good as it could be. It's not very good. But Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is light years better than Coming to America 2, for sure. No doubt about it. And I really enjoyed it. Now, are they going to do a fifth one? I don't know. Jerry Bruckheimer and Eddie Murphy have talked about it. There's rumblings about it. They're going to wait and see how well this one does on Netflix and whether or not, there's a calling for it. I'll just say this before I jump over to the chat room. I'll say that, would I be open to seeing a fifth movie? Sure. Yeah, sure. Because I love the characters and I love the universe. But having watched the movie, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think you need to do another. You never need to do another one, but I'm just saying that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was exactly what it needed to be and all that it could be in 2024. But I'm not over the moon about it to the point where I'm like, oh my God, yes, you've tapped into something here. Oh my God, you've done something. Oh my God, there's something here. Holy fuck, we need a new trilogy. Holy shit. I'm not feeling that. I think it was a nice return. I think it was really fun. It was great to see them in their roles again. And the way that it ended felt like, that's nice. You know what I mean? That's nice. That's a nice bookend. That's a nice, you haven't disrespected the franchise. You've done something that, don't go off and make The Last Jedi. Don't go off and make Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, right? Don't go do that. Just that's nice. That's nice. You've come back and you've done something like how Sylvester Stallone did with Rocky, right? You sort of wrote the wrongs of Rocky 5 and you delivered Rocky Balboa. Now I know there's Creed 1 and 2 and 3. I get all that. But in terms of the Rocky franchise, Stallone didn't go off and do another Rocky film and nor does he need to. And so I kind of feel like, that's good. It's good. Yes, this is good. But money. We'll see what happens. We'll see how many people tune in on Netflix, how many people, sign up for Netflix to watch it. Who knows? There's it's a different measuring stick in terms of how they measure Netflix movie success, because obviously they can't do that by the box office. But we'll see what happens. But I don't feel like you need to do, like, I'm not like, oh my God, yes, do a fifth one, please. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, no, I'm good. Like, it's just good. This is good. This was like, you did a really great job. Good job, guys. Good job. And I'm okay. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, let's jump over to the Super Chats. Some Super Chats came in. Josh McKenna sends in $1.99 and says, "You're such a fantastic communicator." Oh, thanks, Josh. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Let me see here. J Beach 2078 says, "Dave, when I binged all three, I felt that drop at 3." Oh, so you did as well. Amazing. It didn't have that punch like the first two. Exactly. If you watch Beverly Hills Cop 3 on its own, just randomly one day, you're just like, I just feel like watching Beverly Hills Cop 3, then you're probably not going to notice it. But I implore Beverly Hills Cop fans out there, watch 1, 2, and 3 back to back. And if you can't watch it back to back, because I understand that's sitting down for 6 hours, then watch it over the course of a day or two. Oh my God, do you ever feel a whoa? The contrast between 3 and 2 is one of the biggest contrasts I've ever felt between any sequels in any franchise ever. It's unreal. Totally true. Let me see here. Happy Sanjo returns as a member. Thank you, Happy. Appreciate that. Josh McKenna sends in $9.99 and says, were there any celebrity deaths that made you cry? I remember the one that got me was Robin Williams. I teared up. There have been no celebrity deaths that have made me cry, but when Harrison Ford passes away, watch out. I may have to go into mourning on that one. Thank you, Josh. Maca5250 Outlaw Gaming sends in £1 and 99 pence. Oh, no, wait. That's a pound or euros? No, I think that's a pound. That's pounds. JGL would have made a good Robin in Batman movies. Oh, yeah. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, he probably would have. I mean, that's kind of what they were alluding to in The Dark Knight Rises, kind of. Yeah, he probably would have. Brandon Collins sends in $5, says, this felt closest to part 2. Predictable? Yes. Believable? No. Did it hit every note it had in order to make me grin from ear to ear? Fuck yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, I would argue and say that I would think that, most action movies have an air of suspension of disbelief. I don't necessarily believe everything in Beverly Hills Cop 1 either. But it felt great. It felt like, again, like it needed to, this is what it needed to be. And, I'm sure you'd probably agree, I think it's all it can be in 2024. I think it's all it can be. And if they can make this movie in 2024, they could have made this movie in 1994. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the tone and the feel and the style. And they didn't do that. And so I just don't, and again, hey, different strokes for different folks. People have to be honest. And if it doesn't work for you and you didn't like the movie and you thought it was crap or whatever the case is, all power to you. But I question sometimes when it comes to legacy sequels, and that doesn't mean that legacy sequels are all good. They're not. Look at Coming to America, right? But I think, at the end of the day, it's a franchise that's way past its expiry date. Like I said, they don't make action movies like this anymore. And when I say like this, I don't mean good like this. I just mean the logistics of action movies. When you watch action movies like Lethal Weapon or, Beverly Hills Cop or 48 Hours, when you watch how the action is choreographed and how the film is edited, and they don't make movies like this anymore. And so this felt very much, again, it had a bit of a modern polish to it, sure, but it still felt very much like an 80s movie today. And that's not going to work, especially for a younger crowd. If you're a teenager in early 20s, you may find the movie slow. You may find the action maybe a bit uneventful. Whoop-de-doo, cars, whoop-de-doo, car crashes a little bit. Oh, okay, you know what I mean? Because you're so used to the sensational, over-the-top action of the action movies of today. So, there probably will be a bit of that. But they delivered a 80s Beverly Hills Cop style action movie. They delivered it. Loaded with nostalgia and got, old folks like myself and Brandon Collins to just grin from ear to ear. Because it's exactly what we wanted. It's like, myself and Brandon were heading out to an AC/DC concert and we're like, yeah, we're not expecting Back in Black, but you know what? They did it. They rocked it. They were great. They sounded good. They sounded respectable. And it made us grin from ear to ear. And he was busting out. Back in! It was great. We had a great time. We walked away. It was good. And that's where your expectation should be. Now, if Brian Johnson was on stage going, hells bells, hell, highway to hell, highway to hell. Well, then, okay. Then it's like, I think, you know what I'm saying? Then it's kind of like, but that's not what we got here. That's not what Beverly Hills Cop fans got here. They got an action movie that was a Beverly Hills Cop film. And I thought it was a lot of fun and hit all the right beats. So, again, if you're a Beverly Hills Cop fan, if you're an Eddie Murphy fan, just do yourself a favor, suspend your expectations and just go in and just understand what you're watching. You know what I mean? Just, it's a reunion tour. Take it as that. You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. That's how I felt about The Dial of Destiny. Was The Dial of Destiny as good as the first 3 movies? No, of course not. He's 80. He's 80. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like many people say, well, yeah, the best part of The Dial of Destiny was like the first 20 minutes. Well, yeah, because he was de-aged and it felt more realistic and it felt more Indiana Jones. Of course. But at the end of the day, I watched it. I enjoyed it for what it was. It made me smile to see him one last time. I don't think Harrison Ford was embarrassing. I don't think there was anything that made me go, come on. I mean, maybe a couple of the chase scenes were a little like, but there was nothing that was too crazy. And so I was like, hey, you know what? It was fine. It was fine. I enjoyed it for what it was. You know what I mean? It wasn't a disaster, contrary to what people would lead you to believe. It was fine. Now, is Beverly Hills Cop 4 a better legacy sequel than Dial of Destiny? Yes, absolutely. But it's also because, it's a different, it's a totally different beast. But yes, it is. So I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy it. Cody the Zombie sends in a member chat, but a member for 7 months says, I thought the new Bad Boys movie was really good and funny. It was better than the last one. I have not seen a Bad Boys movie since I think the original. I haven't seen the second one, haven't seen the third one, and haven't seen, what's this one? Ride or Die or something like that. I haven't seen this one either. So, but I hear they're good. Brett Patrick sends in $4.99 and says, really enjoyed the new movie. It had the atmosphere of the first two. I agree. I'm wondering if Ronnie Cox was asked back, another great legacy character. Yeah, I don't know. He's still alive. I think he's close to 90 or something like that. Or 80s, in his 80s at least. Yeah, you know what? I mean, maybe they did. Maybe there just wasn't a role for him, and they didn't want to give him sort of a, I mean, you do see his picture in the movie, but yeah, I don't know. It would have been cool, but he certainly couldn't have been out there. You know what I mean? He couldn't have been out there, or maybe he didn't want to, or maybe he's retired. Maybe he's a retired actor right now. I'm not entirely sure, but that's always possible, But yeah, no, I thought, but yeah, Ronnie Cox was obviously a big part of the first 2 movies, at the very least. And seeing Serge back, that was fun. Kind of pointless, but his cameos are. But it felt very much in line with the first. Well, he was in the first one. He wasn't in the second one. He was in the third one. It felt very much in line with that. So I enjoyed it. I did. His return, I mean. RMJ Movie Review says, I enjoyed it too, but I'm also 42 years old and grew up with the films. Younger kids may not really like it. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's likely what's going to happen. I heard my cat. Hey, Vita, what's going on? What's happening? What's shaking? I don't know if you guys heard her, but she's slinking around here. But I would say, yeah, like I think that is likely the case. I think if you've never seen a Beverly Hills Cop movie and you didn't grow up with the franchise and you're 25 years old, then watching this movie, I don't know why you would watch this movie without watching the first 2 at least. But yeah, you will probably watch this movie. And if you're younger, the first thought will be, this feels like a Netflix movie. Do you know what I mean? That's probably what you're going to think. This is so Netflix, such a Netflix movie, because again, the action it's a safe movie. It feels like, again, not to beat a dead horse here, but it really does in terms of the choreographing of the action and the plot and the story and the predictable nature of it and all that kind of stuff. It feels very 80s, but that's okay. What did you want? Did you want a Beverly Hills Cop Fast and Furious style movie? Like, did you want, and then some people might say, well, no, we just want, and it's like, well, yeah, but it's not the 80s anymore, So I always temper my expectations when Hollywood does legacy sequels to 80s franchises. Like if they were to do a Goonies sequel today, I would immediately go, oh, okay, you know, like what are we gonna, do you know what I mean? Like it's like, I just don't think, I think fans would save themselves a lot of heartache and give themselves more of the opportunity to be surprised, and pleasantly so, if we begin to realize that, you know, if Hollywood begins to make a legacy sequel to something that expired 40 years ago or 30 years ago, the probability goes against them that they're going to deliver exactly what I want. Like that feeling you got when you were a kid, you can never get it again. You can get it a little bit in drips and drabs and moments of it, but you're not a child anymore. So that magic is no longer there. That naivety, I was going to say a couple things at once, but I was going to say the ignorance, but the naivety, the ignorance, and I don't mean ignorant in a bad way, but just you're a kid. So there's a certain magic. Do you know what I mean? And today replicating that magic can only come, as Brandon Collins said, like in the ways that it did for people our age. Like, you know what? It was this, it was that, but it was exactly what it needed to. It made me smile. It made me grin, and I had fun with it. You know what I mean? And I think that's really at the end of the day, when you're doing legacy sequels to iconic franchises, especially that have such a pop culture footprint, because you always know that they're likely going, especially if it's coming from a franchise that's kind of dead and that has a rabid fan base that is pissed off, there's always a likelihood that Hollywood, in the first one back, is going to deliver something familiar and safe to prove to you that they can do it, and then to hopefully get fans back on board and get excited again, right? Deliver something safe, deliver something familiar, give them the pizza, give them the birthday cake, you know, don't go too crazy, don't be too avant-garde, just deliver. And there's nothing wrong with that. People bitched and moaned that Ghostbusters Afterlife was too safe. And I'm like, what? Well, yeah. And then now look what they did with Frozen Empire, and, you know, I think they should have just left it at Afterlife personally, but Afterlife is really all it could have been. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you're doing something so many years later, you know, and, you know, I don't know if there's ever going to be a Ghostbusters sequel to Frozen Empire. I don't think that's the plan. There is a few things I know that I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, so I won't, but I don't think the plan is to do another live action soon. Although I don't know for sure. But yeah, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, it's, I understand it. Sometimes I think, I don't know. I think sometimes when your job is a movie critic, and not all movie critics are like this, not all of them are, but I feel that some movie critics take their jobs way too seriously, and they feel that they have to, like, well, my job is to critique a movie, so I have to critique it. Sometimes it's okay to say, hey, this is good, it's fine, and just kind of leave it at that. You know, you don't have to force yourself to dislike something or force yourself to like something either. It can go both ways. Right? It can go both ways. But sometimes when I read, not all of them, but sometimes, and this might usually be coming from people that really don't know their asses from their elbows when it comes to film criticism, you know, but sometimes I'll read a critique on something and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what do you expect? Like, what did you expect? Did you expect them? Like, did you expect to sit down and feel like you did when you've watched the first Beverly Hills Cop? Like, is that what you're expecting here? Because that's literally impossible. It's literally impossible, right? You can get close, you know, like what the, you know, you can get close, but it's not going to happen. You know, you're not a child anymore. You're not 10. It's over. That era of filmmaking is over. So I think what they delivered here was great. And I don't think they need to do another one. I think you could just leave it at this and call it a win. Hey, it's a win. It was a win. It was a win. So I enjoyed it. Peter Juan sends in $10. Thanks, Peter. Says, hi, Dave. I sent you a message on FB regarding a song donation for It's Me Billy Chapter 2. Not sure if you got it or not, as my messenger is fucked up. If you want to hear it and use it, let me know. If not, no worries. Okay, Peter, I will check my messages. Thank you for letting me know. I will go in and check the many things. You said Facebook, so obviously on many things, Dave McRae. Okay. I will go in, Peter. I will go in and see if I can find your message. And thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. I can't make any guarantees, as you know, because I have had quite a few people reach out to me wanting to know, wanting a song in the movie or to score the film or all that kind of stuff. We largely have that taken care of already, but let me take a look and take a listen to your song. And if it can't be used here, maybe it can be used somewhere else in the future. You know, you never know. So I will take a look for your message. Thank you very much. Nathaniel Fincher says, Dave has one of the most entertaining personalities on YouTube. Well, thank you, Nathaniel. I appreciate that very much. It's very nice of you to say. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have I got all the super chats? I think I do, right? I think I do. Do I? I'm not sure. I think I do. Let me scroll back and just see if anybody's talking about the movie. Chester Franklin Jr. says Beverly Hills Cop 3 wasn't good. Yeah, I didn't like it either. I did not like it either. Ryan Oshlow says Dr. Dolittle is good too. Dr. Dolittle is good. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that was Eddie Murphy's sort of resurgence. Do you know what I mean? He was kind of, because he had like, after coming to America, he had quite a few misses, including Beverly Hills Cop 3. And then thanks to movies like Dr. Dolittle and like, you know, The Nutty Professor, sort of in the late 90s, he had a bit of a resurgence. And then he kind of fell off again, and then, of course, the Shrek movies with voiceover helped him a lot too. So I think that's probably largely where a lot of his wealth comes from, is from the Shrek films. But and I will say this though, Beverly Hills Cop 4 cost $150 million to make. That's the production budget. That doesn't include marketing. Whoa. $150 million. Now there's a lot of action sequences for sure, a lot of different set pieces. But I'm like, wow, $150 million for that. Whew. Crazy, crazy. Oh, Bowfinger. Yeah, that's right. Peter says Bowfinger. Yes. Yes. I remember Bowfinger. That was a funny movie. That was 1999, I believe. I think was Bowfinger. That was fun. That was a fun movie. That was all part of sort of the Eddie Murphy assance, you know, kind of in the late 90s. Dr. Dolittle, was there a Dr. Dolittle 2? Can't remember, but there was Dr. Dolittle, there was Nutty Professor, there was Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps. Bowfinger with Steve Martin and Heather Graham. Whatever happened to Heather Graham? She was cute. Probably still is. But there was, there's been a lot of, that kind of in the late 90s, he had a bit of a resurgence, which was nice. And then he went right into Shrek. And then, of course, kind of Dreamgirls, of course, kind of helped him a little bit with the Academy Award nomination. So yeah, but this is good. It's all it could be, you know. I think it's good. Like I would give this movie like a 7, 8 out of 10. You know what I mean? Something like that. Yeah, that's solid. Really, really good. You know, it's too bad we live in a sphere where, you know, people giving 7 or 8s out of 10s, you know, that could be perceived as dog shit. That's crazy. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I know I've said this before, but the entertainment landscape online, the movie sphere online is just, it's so weird. It's so crazy. You know, all the, it's just like I should say the discourse online is just absolutely crazy. I thought Veda was watching me for a minute. All right. We'll go a few minutes longer. Peter sends in a member chat. Thanks. Peter says, yeah, no worries, dude. Art is art. Literally no hard feelings if you don't use it. Looking forward to the film. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate. Oh yeah. No, it's not personal at all. Not at all. I mean, I haven't heard it yet, so I will take a listen. And if I'm like, oh, you know what, we could use, I will definitely let you know. If not, I would definitely let you know. And maybe there's somewhere where I can use it, in the future, who knows? But yeah, I am planning on doing a It's Me Billy Chapter 2 update show very soon, to kind of talk about everything, the campaign, the digital perks, of course, the McRae lives and all that kind of stuff. We are very close now to sending the project file off to Greg to do all the color on it and everything. So probably in the next week or two, that's about to happen. And so we're getting close now where I can finally kind of, shift my attention and focus now over to perks, and everything else has to go on. Of course, there's still other things like the trailer needs to be cut, and there's a pickup shot we have to get this summer. But in terms of the actual picture lock itself, we're very close to locking picture, and we're close to locking sound as well, although sound will probably be tweaked throughout the next few months too. But yeah, no, for sure. Josh Lott sends in $5. Hey Josh, what's going on, buddy? Thank you very much. It says Beverly Hills Cop is equally important to me as Halloween. Ooh, my college friends even sometimes call me Axel Foley since I referred to the movie so much. Amazing. Well, Josh, then I assume you'll be sitting down watching Beverly Hills Cop Axel F if you haven't already. I think you'll like it. I don't know how much of the show you've watched here today, but I think you're going to like this movie. I think you will. If you're a big Beverly Hills Cop fan, which you claim to be, which I am too, of course, especially if you're a big fan of those first two movies, I think you're going to enjoy this movie. I think you will. I think it'll put a smile on your face. The nostalgia hits hard, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's a safe movie, but in all the good ways. Let me see here. Okay, got that. Just scrolling back to see who's talking. Beverly Hills Cop. Hatchet Boy says Trading Places, definitely my top 10. Oh, for sure. Trading Places is amazing. Eric Dixon says, I sent a spec for Beverly Hills 4 to John Ashton 10 years ago. He's a nice guy for sure. Amazing. That's really cool. Did he get back to you and did he like it? Let me see. Guys talking about other stuff. That's great. Great. Cool. It's cool. Alley Girl says Heather Graham did Suitable Flesh with Barbara Crampton, and it was really good. Suitable Flesh. I've never seen Suitable Flesh. I don't think I've ever heard of Suitable Flesh. I'll have to check it out. Brandon Collins says Norbit was a huge hit despite being critically Norbit. Oh my God. Yeah. I haven't seen Norbit. I haven't seen it, but you say it cost him the Oscar. Maybe it might have. But it shouldn't have. It shouldn't have, because at the end of the day, you're an act. I mean, it has nothing. Norbit has absolutely nothing to do with Dreamgirls. So, like, were people just pissed off because he was playing that kind of a person? Fuck, man. Whatever. There are certain people in this world that just are just professionally outraged, and it's just like, okay, fine, whatever. Yeah. I agree. Like, I know what you're saying, but it should not have. If it did, it should not have. Chester Franklin Jr. says, all due respect, but Eddie Murphy should have been nominated for the best comedian actor in the 80s. Well, if there was an award called the best comedian actor, he probably would have been up there. Although Bill Cosby was still, hot in the 80s. Richard Pryor was still hot in the 80s. So it still would have been a tough thing. But listen, Eddie Murphy is, whether it's 48 Hours, whether it's Trading Places, whether it's Beverly Hills Cop, whether it's The Golden Child, whether it's Beverly Hills Cop 2, whether it's Coming to America, whether it's another 48 Hours, not quite as good as the 48 Hours, but, respectable. He was fire. He was fire in the 80s. He was the 80s in a lot of ways. Like, he is a 80s cultural icon in a lot of ways. And, yeah, so I don't know, man. If you're a big Beverly Hills Cop fan, do yourself a favor, watch all 3 movies, watch for that dip in Beverly Hills Cop 3, and then see how much. I actually think if you watch Beverly Hills Cop 1, 2, and 3, and then watch part 4, I think you're going to enjoy it that much more because you're going to be coming from that dip in part 3. It's a huge dip. Again, if you haven't seen these movies in years and you just decide one day to watch part 3, you're not going to notice it. You're not necessarily going to like the movie, but you're not going to notice the drop in energy and how lethargic that film is in compared to the first 2. But if you want to have a little bit of a Beverly Hills Cop-assance, and revisit those films because you haven't watched them in a while, they're all on Netflix right now. 1, 2, 3, and obviously 4, which was released today. They're all on there. Do yourself a favor. Axel F ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So do yourself a favor, start with 1, go to 2, then go to 3 and watch the dip in energy and feel. It's like, this is such a weird film. It's a weird movie. And I think that will actually help you appreciate Beverly Hills Cop Axel F even more. So yeah, that's what I would do. Evil Alex says, I watched Godzilla X Kong the other day. I loved it. Big fun action. How'd you like Axel F? I just came in. Loved Axel F. I thought it was great. I have no interest in seeing Godzilla X Kong. When it comes to streaming, maybe I'll stream it. I'm not sure. I did watch Godzilla vs. Kong because I was such a big fan of Godzilla King of the Monsters. I think Godzilla King of the Monsters, the 2019 film, is the best MonsterVerse movie. I think Godzilla vs. Kong, it is what it is. Godzilla X Kong, I don't have any interest because, to your point, what I don't like about what has happened with the MonsterVerse is that they started being serious and now it's gone to dumb fun action. I don't like that. If you started serious, stay serious. If you started dumb fun, then be dumb fun. But the Godzilla we got in 2014 is not the same Godzilla that is in Godzilla X Kong. Like, the trailers just look like a PS5 video game. Kong's got the Infinity God. I mean, he's like, what the fuck is happening to this franchise? What is going on? Kong is riding on Godzilla's back. And I know, and I'm not saying you, Evil Alex. I'm just saying in general, I know people can, and it made over 500. I mean, I just don't understand. It's, I don't know, man. I guess maybe I'm just, and I say this with all due respect to people who like the movie, it's just not for me. I've just grown out of that. I'm just like, I'm done. Like, I don't care. I don't, and I think it's because it is purely because of this. It's purely because of this. I like my Godzilla movies serious. Serious. My favorite Godzilla movies are the original 1954 film, right? The Godzilla 1956 American film, which is not quite as good as 54 original. It's the American, it's the same movie. They just put in, the American footage. But I like the serious themes, the serious tone. Godzilla 1985, Godzilla -1. I like it when it's taken seriously. It's played like Shakespeare. That just means that you take shit seriously. I like that it's taken seriously. There's themes about, whether it's the Cold War, whether it's nuclear weapons, whether it's, there's philosophical things there. There's about humanity and destruction, and Godzilla's a metaphor. Godzilla is a metaphor. He's a symbol. He's a symbol of what can happen when humans misbehave. For a lot of Godzilla fans, or a lot of people that go to the MonsterVerse movies, they actually don't understand that. They don't realize the origins of Godzilla and where he comes from and what his point was. Godzilla was created because of the nuclear testing in the Pacific Ocean, and Godzilla attacked Japan as a metaphor for the Nagasaki and Hiroshima nuclear weapon bombs in 1945. And Godzilla was a metaphor, was a symbol basically saying, you fuck around and this is what can happen. We have to stop using nuclear weapons because this is what can happen. We can create monsters that can destroy us. And Godzilla, that's why he's nuclear. He's breathing atomic fire because of he's a metaphor for the whole. And so I love all the much deeper, rich cinematic language, the symbolism, all that kind of stuff. It's not that I can't have fun. I'm not a complete party pooper. But when you look at the potential that the 2014 film had, and you look at where we are now, I'm just like, what the fuck is this dog shit? Like and I say that with all due respect to people who loved it. It's just not for me. I'm just like, okay, like Godzilla versus Kong was as far as I was willing to go. Now I watch the trailers for Godzilla X Kong and I'm like, and then you could say, well, you haven't seen the movie. I don't need to see the movie. I don't need to see it to know exactly what it is, because I have friends that have seen it and been like, it's exactly that. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Because it's all there. It's just like watching a video game for for an hour and a half or, 2 hours. There's no longer scale. It's just, they've gone back to what I don't like about the kaiju movies of the 70s, there's an era of Godzilla films in the late 60s or in the 60s and the 70s that was just dumb, hokey fun, because the Japanese realized soon after the Godzilla films in the 50s were made that kids really began to glom onto Godzilla. And that's why Godzilla became more kid-friendly, and it was goofy, and Godzilla was doing karate chops. Seriously, brush up on you. He's doing karate chops. And he's like talking in some movies, and it's just silly. There's certain movies I like Godzilla versus Gigan, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. There's certain films from the 70s that I don't mind, but overall, it's just silly, childish, kiddie movies is what they are. And then when Godzilla 1984, the American version Godzilla 1985 came out, it was back to basics, back to roots about the Cold War, nuclear weapons, Godzilla being a symbol. It was a solo Godzilla movie, but he was scary. The best looking Godzilla suit I think there's ever been, even still to this day. A combination between man in suit, animatronic, it was fucking phenomenal. Raymond Burr's speech at the end of the 1985 film. I mean, there's so much. It was back to, and then of course they went on and got silly again. But so when I look at Godzilla X Kong, I'm just like, whereas in my opinion, the best Godzilla, the best movie in the MonsterVerse is Godzilla King of the Monsters. Yes, because I'm a Godzilla fan and I much prefer solo Godzilla movies, but also because I thought it was the nice balance. It was a nice balance between monster fights and character and a little bit of philosophical stuff in there. Not much, but it seemed a nice balance. But by the time you get to Godzilla X Kong and Kong is riding Godzilla like he's fucking riding a horse into battle, I'm just like, I'm out. And he's got fucking Thanos' glove on his. I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm out. Like, what's next? He's gonna put on pants? Like, why doesn't Kong? He's an ape. We're descendants from ape. Why doesn't Kong get smart enough to put on pants and a jacket? Like, why not? Like, why not? Has it happened yet? I don't know, but why not? Why not? He's fucking got a shirt and tie. Why not? He gets cold. Why not? Why not? Get out of here. But that's me. That's me. Josh McKenna sends a $9.99, says, speaking of reviewers, I saw someone who reviewed It's Me, Billy, and they gave it a 1 out of 10. I didn't take them seriously. They said that things didn't even make sense. I don't remember the reviewer's name. Oh, yeah. Look, Josh, when you there's reviews. When you make a movie or you create art and you put it out for the world to see, you let the chips fall where they may, right? And some people are going to like what you do. Some people are not going to like what you do. Some people are going to love what you do. Some people are going to hate what you do. And that's just the nature of it, right? And not all, I can't say all, but there were a few 1-star reviews of It's Me, Billy when it came out, because they were coming from troll accounts, right? They were coming from people that watch me on YouTube that don't like me. So they'll create a bunch of troll accounts. They'll give a 1-star review. They'll say that this is a piece of shit. They'll say things like, it's an amateur production. It looks awful. The acting is they'll say things that you just can't take seriously, right? Do you know what I mean? So you're like, oh, okay. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you can't take it seriously. But unfortunately, the review, remains there because obviously I have no control over to remove it. And so it is what it is. But then there are some people that will write a fair critique about things that they'll say, oh, I like this, but wasn't crazy on this or wasn't crazy on that. There's what could be perceived as negative reviews for It's Me, Billy from people that are not trolls either. That people that maybe give it like maybe like a 5 out of 10 or like a 2 out of 5 or, whatever the case is, because it just didn't work for them, right? It didn't work for them. And maybe they found it too slow, or maybe they're not fans of the original Black Christmas and they watch this one and they're not fans of this movie. I've seen reviewers review It's Me, Billy that have come out and said, I'm not a fan of the original film and therefore I didn't like this movie. There's people that have said that. There's people that have said, oh, I thought there was going to be more killing and blood and guts and gore, and there wasn't, and so I'm not a fan of the movie. There's many different reasons why people may not like a movie or why it may not work for them, right? All of which are not are not in the control of the filmmaker. So yeah, I've seen a couple of those too, and mostly, at least the ones I've seen, are from people that are trolls. Their accounts are created the same day the movie comes out. They only have that 1 out of 10 review on their account. They've never reviewed anything else. You usually can tell when somebody's being spiteful and they just want to take you down because they don't like you. And I just say, go fuck yourself. I really don't care. I really don't care. It makes no difference. We know the product we've put out. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to like it. I'm not saying that. But in terms of the quality of the product, we know what we can deliver. We know what we're putting out. We know what we're capable of. And we know, fair enough. Do what you need to do to make yourself feel better, right? But it is what it is. It is what it is. But that's the nature of it, right? You put yourself out there. You open yourself up to fair criticism, right? Fair criticism. You open yourselves up to nonsense, bullshit, dog shit trolls. And you open yourselves up to people who also love the movie, who want to say how much they love the movie, right? So, it's the nature of it's the nature of the business, the nature of the business. Brandon Collins says, I may have my nerd card revoked, but I've never been a huge fan of Godzilla movies. I like the original and I really loved Godzilla -1. That's okay, man. That's okay. You don't need your nerd card revoked. Maybe suspended. We'll just suspend it. No. It's amazing to me though how many people, I'm not saying you, but in general, how many people don't understand actually the history of Godzilla and why he's nuclear and all that. And I think there's so much more meat on the bone. It's just so much better, in my opinion, when there's different, Godzilla's, the savior of the earth and he comes when he's called. Okay. But there's two different types of Godzilla fans. There's Godzilla fans that just wants to watch things tear shit up. And there's Godzilla fans that also want story. It's fine. That's fine. Hatchet Boy says, I would give It's Me, Billy a higher rating than a 1 out of 10. I would give it a 9 out of 10. Definitely the best fan film I've seen. Well, thank you, Hatchet Boy. I appreciate that very much. Chester says 10 out of 10. Thank you. And like I've said many times, when you watch It's Me, Billy Chapter 2 this fall, it may be in your best interest to watch Chapter 1 before you watch Chapter 2. And as a matter of fact, why don't you go that extra step further and watch the original Black Christmas, then Chapter 1, then Chapter 2. Then you will get the full experience and you'll probably feel a lot better. All right, one more minute. We'll go one more minute. Have I got all the super chats? I believe I've got all the super chats. I just want to make sure. I think I've got them all. We'll go one more minute here because I have to skedaddle. I have some things I have to do. Scared State Production says, I'm not really a fan of Black Christmas, but I think It's Me, Billy was better. It's more in line with what I thought a Black Christmas would be. Oh, interesting. Fascinating. Well, you know what? The original of Black Christmas, again, it's a dated film, right? 1974. It's dated. It didn't spawn a franchise, so it doesn't have, it's very niche, very, it's a cult film. One of the most important films in the history of horror, mind you. It definitely is, but it didn't spawn a franchise, so it wasn't in the pop culture zeitgeist like Freddy, Jason, Michael, and what have you. But yeah, no, it's an important film for sure. It's celebrating its 50th year anniversary this year. So pretty crazy stuff. Evil says, did you see Ghostbusters Frozen yet? And will you review it on a McRae show? Well, again, no, I will not review it. But I did see it and I thought it was okay. I thought it was a little long. I thought there were too many characters. I just thought it was okay. I think Afterlife is the far better film. All right, folks, listen, that's going to do it for me here on this episode of McRae Live. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to my channel members for being channel members. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the super chats that came in today. I really, really appreciate them, of course. And thank you to my moderators for doing what you guys do. I really appreciate all of you as well. Listen, if you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts on the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, and especially on Beverly Hills Cop 4, or better known as Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Let me know your thoughts on the movie. It is out on Netflix today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. And it was great to see Eddie Murphy back in arguably his most iconic role, Axel Foley. So jump into the comment section and let me know your thoughts, and I will be back soon with another episode of McRae Live. But until then, have a great rest of your Wednesday, and in the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you soon. Alrighty. Cheers.